Mistakes on YouTube, episode 43. If you're looking to listen to it on any of the podcasting apps, just a little bit of housekeeping since it's been a while. I haven't put out an episode in 3.5 years, and this is the first episode where there's actually video. Originally, when I started the podcast, I had always intended for it to be with other guests. At the time, I was traveling, and so it was a lot easier to just do it by myself. So I think it started out more as like a personal journal about where I was at in my life and about my travel experiences. So know if you have listened to it in the past, it will be different now. It's going to be more focused on other people as opposed to me. This first guest, just a little quick background. Her name's Jana Collins. She's a family friend. My youngest brother and her daughter have been friends for like 15 plus years at this point. So I've known Jana a long time. The thing that always has struck me about her is that she's had a lot of success in her life, but she's always been incredibly generous. I think she's easily the most generous person I've ever met. So I was really excited to be able to speak to her. She's had a very interesting life. It was funny, we were talking at the beginning and she was saying how like, why would anyone want to listen to what I have to say? And I think we talked about a lot of things where I was like, wow, I didn't know that about you. And it was really interesting. So she has had a lot of success in real estate, but she always has done like different things as well. We talked about her doing nursing. She's done politics. She actually worked in California politics and like has met Ronald Reagan, went to the White House. That was something that I never knew before, and I thought that was kind of cool. She's done public relations, and then she's also done like real estate where she owns different apartment buildings and flips houses on the side as well. So there's a lot of different things that we talked about. I think the biggest takeaway for me personally was her mindset. I think really successful people all have a similar mindset, and you could kind of see that with her. She's not really afraid of failure. It's more so about just like doing something and putting in the work. I don't think there's anything holding her back from doing anything she wants to do. And I actually asked her towards the end of the episode if she has ever not done something that she wanted to do. And that her answer was no, because she's always done everything she wanted to do. So I hope you enjoy the episode. I'm hoping to do one a week. We'll see. I have to find out who my next guest is going to be. I have someone in mind, but we'll see if they're willing to do it or not. So with that, I hope you enjoy the episode. And so I remember a few years ago, we were sitting in that room and my mom had you tell me this story about when you were trying, was it like pajamas that you were trying to sell, the silk pajamas?
Oh, yes. That? Yeah, of course.
So I wanted to start with that.
Okay.
Just tell it
okay.
From the beginning.
So.
How old were you?
How old was that? It has to be 30 years ago.
Okay. And were you like successful at that point, like financially, or were you?
Yeah, I had.
Okay.
I had just made, my net worth was $1 million. So.
Okay. So pretty successful already.
Well,
and then you
that's
have.
Not too successful, but.
For most people, I'd
a
say.
little bit of money.
Yeah. Okay.
Bill and I had gone to Hong Kong and bought, as gifts, I brought back the Chinese silk pajamas. I put them on, I pranced around, and I said, look how cute these are, look how cute these are. And I said, when we get back from our trip, I said to my husband, I could sell these. And he said, yes, you could. And I said, I bet I could get these into Nordstrom. And he said, if anybody could, you could. So then I gathered back the gifts that I gave, the silk pajamas that I gave as gifts. I called Nordstrom's lingerie buyer, who happened to be headquartered out of Glendale.
And so you just looked that up and then called? It's not like you had a connection or anything, right?
Nope, no connection. I made a cold call to the Glendale Nordstroms and said, how do I show you guys my silk pajamas? And they said, oh, the buyer is headquartered here. It gave me her name. I called her, met with her. And I bring in my beautiful silk pajamas. And she's loves them. And she said, I'd like to bring these in for Mother's Day. Sounded great to me. So I walked out basically with an order. I didn't have all of the answers that she wanted, like thread count, because who even knew what that was, right? But I walked out with an order. Now I just had to figure out how I was going to fulfill that order, because I didn't know the name of the store that I bought these pajamas at.
In Hong Kong.
In Hong Kong. So I called the hotel and I got the concierge to tell me what the name of the store was where I bought these. And he translated for me. So I ended up buying like 150 of these. It was like the pajamas and the silk bathrobes.
Okay.
And I brought them in. Part of the lesson of that in my life is if anybody, not just me, because it's not rocket scientist work that we're doing or brain surgery work that we're doing, but if you see something and you want it, if you put your mind to it, there's a way to achieve everything that you want to in life. Everybody in this country has the opportunity to be successful. Absolutely everybody. You have to find the drive in your belly and be creative in getting there. There's not just one door. There's back doors, there's side doors, there's windows. So I think part of it is just being tenacious and creative.
So I remember, though, it didn't go as planned, right? As far as, tell what happened.
Right. So I had sold my first batch. So that was, then I really thought, oh, I'm in the business now. So I ordered 1,000 pieces. And I had no idea. I was just ordering. And they are delivered in these big, huge boxes that I couldn't even move or lift. And every piece, I probably had about 400 pieces, and they all were stamped with, in red ink, sample, not for resale, which was so difficult. I must have gone to 10 dry cleaners, tried a bunch of ways to get it out. Finally, one dry cleaner figured out how to get them out, but it added like the cost of dry cleaning when it wasn't expected. And the fear of, what do you do with hundreds of pieces of garments that are stamped in big red ink?
And then, did you end up losing money on that, or did you end up making money?
Overall, I made money, not a lot, but it was just being creative in how am I going to get around it.
And then, so did you stop, though, after that 1,000 order?
I did. Yeah.
Was it because of that, what happened with the sampler, or did you just you were like, this isn't really worth?
I don't think I had what would be my next, line or my next look. If I was going to continue, I would have then had a summer look or, spring line.
Okay.
And I'm busy with my other businesses.
You're pretty established already. So yeah. So the reason I wanted to start with that was because when I hear you tell that story, I feel like your attitude in life has been you're interested in doing something and you just do it, right? And you kind of just talked about how you can do anything you want in your life. There's back doors, there's different ways of doing things, right? And when I'm listening to you do that or tell that story, it's in my head, I know for me personally, I wouldn't do something like that. The idea of calling the buyer at Nordstrom, right? And not even having it all figured out already, right? Not having knowing what it's going to be, not actually having ordered anything, that to me is crazy. But I feel that is a common thing with really successful people, is they kind of just go for it and then they figure it out.
Let me share one back with you, Connor. Okay. You got a passport, left the country for 9 months by yourself. Yeah, that's an amazing feat. You didn't speak any other language. By yourself, a little bit of money in your pocket, and you left the country and you were successful in that. So
That's true. Yeah.
it's almost like it takes like a little creative idea to be successful, the passion to do it. I think everybody has to find like what they love to do, and if you love what you're doing and you have it be so, it's like I'm living the great life.
So that like attitude you have, did you always have that when you were a kid, or did you have to kind of develop that as you got older?
I was very fortunate growing up. My grandfather, thought the world, the sun rose and set with me, and he would always tell me, you can be anything in this world that you want. And my mother was so supportive of me in any endeavor that I want. And now I'm married and I have a husband that thinks I can do anything.
Okay. And are you from California originally?
Born and raised.
Born and raised in California. And your parents too are from California, or were they?
No, my mom originally was born in New York and moved out here when she was basically a teenager.
Okay. And so like at what age did you have like an idea of what you wanted to do as a career, like something, like where was that first idea of like you knew like, oh, this is what I want to do?
So I've changed and done different things in my life. I started out, I went to nursing school. I loved being a nurse.
And what age were you when you started nursing school?
18.
And that's what you're like, I'm going to be a nurse.
I'm going to be a nurse.
After you graduated from high school.
Exactly.
And then I'm going to be a nurse. And
went
you did that.
into nursing school, worked as a nurse, put myself back through college, got a degree in marketing. I really loved politics. I absolutely loved the whole game of politics and the debating of it. So
did you do that or no?
Oh, absolutely. I did fundraising for the Republican Party. I got very active in Republican politics. I stood 5 feet away from the then Governor Reagan.
I was about to ask you if great. Okay, so that's really cool.
The night he accepted I guess when Carter called him, it was like that phone call. He came down to the Century Plaza Hotel ballroom and made the announcement.
So just for a timeline, so you started nursing at 18, and how long, do you know like what age you stopped doing that? Like were you doing politics and nursing? Or
a little bit. They overlapped for a little bit because I was making money working as a nurse. I was interested in politics. Again, this is really thanks to my mom. She owned apartment buildings, and we were active in the fighting of rent control.
Okay.
Is where I got that. I had a wonderful mentor who was very active, a big donor who took me under his wing and would invite me to, meet the president, meet the vice president, meet the governor. So I was able to personally rub elbows with some big Republican leaders. So I was very active in politics all through the Reagan administration.
And were you married to Bill at this point or no?
I
do you remember?
Got married in 88.
In 88, okay. And then the politics, when did you stop doing that? Like what year do you remember?
Well, I'm still active in
but
politics.
Were you like really like...
Well, we had dinner at the White House, things like that under Reagan. I was still married.
That's cool.
Yeah, I was still married to Bill. And in fact, the last time we went to the White House, Bill and I had gone to Switzerland to go skiing, and then we were going to meet my mom and some friends in Washington, D.C., and it was dinner at the White House. We had skied that day, and Bill wore his ski bib overalls or ski pants on the plane because we didn't have time. He didn't have time to change, and his luggage got lost. So he went to the White House in ski cliffs.
Wow.
Everybody else was in tuxedos. So,
That's so funny.
yeah, that
Was he mortified or like how, or was
Nope,
he like,
nope,
"Look,
he's
what are you going to do type of thing?
yeah, what are you gonna do?
That's so funny.
He's
I love how, because I didn't know that, right, about you, we were talking like before we started, right, and just for the audience, it's like you were like, oh, I don't know if I have like an interesting life or anyone's gonna want to hear about it, and then you like dropped that. I've never known it. Like that's really cool, actually. Okay, so you in politics doing that, and then I know you do PR too, public
Yes.
relations, right? So when did you start doing that?
So I started to do some political fundraising
Okay.
in creating events, which was great when the Republicans were in power, because I'm a good conservative Republican. So it overlapped a little bit. I didn't really want to work in a government agency, and it just fell into, well, that's publicity, that's marketing, and so that's my life has always just opened up for the path that I am to take. It's very guided.
Okay.
So I worked for another agency. Then I started my own.
What age were you when you started working at an agency? Do you remember around like what?
Like 22.
22. Okay. So this is like way back.
Yeah.
So you've kind of just, and are you doing the nursing then at that point or no? You're just
No,
doing politics
by this-
and PR. Okay.
Yeah, by that point, I'm done.
So 18 to 22 was nursing with some politics.
Politics.
And then 22 is when you hit your stride with like the politics and then we're doing some PR.
Right.
Okay. And so you're 22, and so how long do you do that for?
About a year and a half. I worked for somebody else, another company, and felt that it was time for me to spread my wings. And I really was going to go to Europe and take off for 2 months.
Okay.
Do a Connor, because I had a good friend that lived in Germany.
Okay.
And traveled a lot. He was an attorney, and so he would go handle different cases in different countries. So I thought, oh, well, that might be kind of fun. I'll just tag with him. And I went to cancel 3 appointments that I had, and all 3 of those people said, no, you worked too hard to get this appointment. I want you to come. I want you to meet with us. One prospective client that then turned into a client said, you need to do this for me. Another client told me what she needed. And at first I was just going to do these little projects just to do it and do it for them and be nice. And then one of the clients said, okay, so now you need to send me a bill. And she said, after looking at my face, it looked like the deer in the headlights. She said, I know you don't know what that looks like, so I've prepared an invoice for you, so you'll want to copy this and send it to me. So I wanted a company. My company's name is Jones and O'Malley. I wanted a name that sounded like I had been around for a while. I didn't want it to be a funny name like, PR by Saturday kind of thing. So I put 2 cats' names together, which turned out to be my initials, and that was it.
Okay. And you've been doing that still to this day.
Exactly.
And so is that, and then so when does like the real estate coming? Is that something you were just doing because your mom was involved in that and you kind of just did that on the side or were a part of that, or like how?
I would say the real estate is like our family business.
Okay.
My mom owned apartment buildings. Always. My father was a builder, but I can remember being not quite 5 years old and going with my mom, and she said, if we rent this apartment and I get the deposit, we'll stop at Pfeiffer's Toy Store on the way home. She got a $25 deposit. We stopped at Pfeiffer's Toy Store, and I got a Maggie Mix-Up doll, which I still have to this day.
Wow.
But I would work with her, clean apartments if she had to. She would paint. I would cut in the baseboard for her.
So as you're growing up, you're doing this.
Right.
Okay.
I learned how to rent. I would go with her, like tied at the hip. So she would look at properties. She would crunch numbers. She would meet with tenants. She would rent apartments. So I just followed right in her footsteps so that I could do that. And when I was 15 years old, she took me in on a deal, and I made $25,000, $24,750. And I thought, that was it. And I bought my first apartment building when I was 18.
Wow. From that money and then just working more and saving up?
Yeah.
Okay.
But it was, it was 8 units, and it was in a bad part of town.
Do you remember where it was?
Absolutely.
Where was it for?
It was in Compton.
Okay.
So a really rough part of the hood.
And do you know what year was the 18? So it was probably, okay. So it was still it was like a really bad area still.
Yeah. Oh, still.
Is it better today, or is it, would you say
it's better today.
Okay.
But I bought that, and my mom said, well, I don't want you going down there. And the real estate broker couldn't believe that I would be willing to buy it. And he said, I'll tell you what, I'll go down and collect the rents for you. And the plan is hold it for a year and sell it. So that's what I did.
Wow.
And I made about $200,000 off of that deal.
So once again, like the theme is like people would be very afraid to do that, especially like I'd imagine as like a woman, and you're tiny, right? And so like to not even I don't know, it seems like there's no doubt, and you're just like, I'm going to do this.
Right. But so you had that same thing, because you got on a plane. Not exact. You had your first little leg of your trip planned out, but then you kind of like went like this, and it's like you figure it out as you go.
So do you think, for not even thinking of like someone listening to this, right? Do you think, is it upbringing? Is it environment? Like, is that, because like you said, your parents and even like your husband, like they're very like positive and have always kind of instilled in you and told you can do whatever you want to do. So like if someone doesn't have that, do you think like they need to find a mentor? Is it getting out of the environment you're in? Because it's hard when you're young, right? Because like it seems like you were like your whole upbringing, you kind of had that like positivity, and then your mom also with you doing all the real estate and helping her out, right? That like really empowered you to like, so, yeah. I think the confidence, obviously, right? And then and then this mindset you had. So like, if someone doesn't have that, it's like, what do you do? Do you have any advice for that?
I think everybody has it. They have to find it, and whether it's meditating or getting a mentor or trying 10 times, you've got to figure out what it is you want. And just don't stop till you get there. And life is also a journey. It's not a destination. It's like it's this great ride that we're on. So it's like not everything is smooth. I've got scars on my knees from, falling down, losses that we've sustained. It's just part of the journey, and how gracefully do you get yourself back up, brush yourself off, and keep going. The other thing that I know that has helped me is to have friends around me that have been there for me in my happy days, and when I'm excited about something, share that with me, but also a good friend that you can lean on and cry on their shoulder when you need to. I think that makes a big difference.
Yeah, I do want to get back to that, because that actually brings up a question. So hopefully I remember. But so I want to ask you though, so you like at 18, you made $200,000, right? Selling this property that you bought. So why?
I would have been 19 by then.
19. Okay. So, but you're still super young, right?
Right.
Why then go into nursing? Why not just stick to real estate and like hit that really hard?
because I didn't want to sell real estate because you make a commission. That's like working for a living. I wanted to make money.
Okay.
And I knew you could make money, and I'm a capitalist at heart. I like owning things. You know, I like real things. I like to kick it.
So then, but going into nursing, like you're still, like you're a salaried employee, right? So
Right.
What was the idea there? Was it just is it something you enjoyed and you were going to make money to save up to then like buy more property, or like what was?
I worked as a nurse. I really love nursing. There's a great part. It's like nursing can feed your soul because you're giving back. It's just lovely. But probably until maybe the past 2 years, I have worked to save money to buy something else.
Okay.
And now at this point, as soon as I've like let it go, it's almost like, you know, the floodgates of heaven have opened up. And it's just even like that much easier. But before I would set a goal. I'm a big goal setter. I like to write my goals down for the day, for the week, for the month, for the year, for the decade, 6 ways from Sunday, list maker. But I always had the goal to buy a piece of property every year. It was on my list.
Okay. So let's go back then, go forward a little bit with the PR and you starting your own like agency, right? You're also doing real estate at this time or no?
Always. I've done real estate always. I was either in partnership with my mom or when my husband and I got married, we literally have bought a piece of property, a minimum of a piece of property every single year.
Since you got married?
Since we've gotten married.
Okay. So since you started that PR agency, you were basically doing like, you had your hand a little bit in politics still, you're doing the PR and you're doing the real estate, right? Okay. And
traveling for fun. That was my life. You just summed it up.
And that's another thing, is that all three of those things are like self-starter entrepreneurship type things, right? Like working for yourself, being your own boss. Is that something that you always wanted to eventually do? Like, did you like being a nurse, right? Like you're obviously giving back and it's nice, but you're also working for like someone, and there's that, like you're an employee, right?
So did you,
right. There's the structure. So did you like not like that, or did you?
The structure never bothered me. Answering to somebody doesn't bother me because I feel like all my clients are my bosses, and I feel like my tenants are my bosses. I want my tenants happy. I want them to pay rent. I want my clients happy. I want them to pay me. And I also genuinely love getting results.
Okay. Is there ever anything that you wanted to do that you never did? Because it doesn't sound like, it seems like anything you wanted to do, you did. Like you tried it. There's no like, oh, I can't do this, or like being in an industry for so long and then like almost like starting over in a way, but you just found a way to.
Yeah, I have been able to move Jones and O'Malley to do different things.
Okay. And has that always been here, or no?
No, my office used to be on Riverside Drive.
Okay.
This is kind of a fun story. Talk about manifestation. I was in a building that my mom was selling, and I was going to have to move, and I was so upset. I wanted something that was close to my house. I wanted something that was little and mine, but I didn't want an office building. And I get in the car to run to the grocery store, and as I get in the car, I say, where I am supposed to go is going to just run right across my path. There'll be no mistaking where I'm supposed to go. I go to the grocery store. I'm sitting at a red light. I look to my left and I see a truck pull up. Two guys get out and they're putting a sign in a yard. Doesn't really do too much for me. I go to the grocery store. I come back. I hit the same signal and I'm going to turn to go up my street. And I see they put a for sale sign. And then they put the second little placard that says office space. I go home. I say to my mom, come on, you got to look at this. I call my husband. We drive over because it's 2 blocks away from my house at that point. I call my husband. He comes over. We call our real estate broker, who calls the person who owned the house, their real estate broker. Their real estate broker calls the owner of the house, who happens to be home. So they look out the window and they say, is that them in the car? Yes, yes, yes. Do they want to see it? Yes, yes, yes. We come in, everybody's on their cell phone. We cut our deal. 30 days later, I was in my office.
Do you remember when that was? What year?
1999.
1999.
23 years ago.
And do you like everything you do equally, or is there something you like the most, like between the PR, the real estate, and like the politics side? Or because I know you said earlier you like really love politics.
I love politics. It's exciting. Although of late, I kind of feel like it's gotten a little nasty, and you see the corruption. So you feel it wasn't like that back then? Yeah, no, it was a good game. You know, it was like, you know, playing football, and I love to win, you know. But I think it's gotten a little bit, like, more corrupt. I love real estate. I like taking an ugly apartment building and making it beautiful. I love creating a place that's a home for somebody. You know, it's where they live. It's where they're going to be happy. And I like making the money, and I love what I do with Jones and O'Malley. I get to be creative. I get to create results for clients.
And has there ever been like a desire to... Have you always had the mentality of like being your best self, or have you been like competitive in the sense of like, I want to be like number one? Because it seems like you've always done different things, right? But it's like, do you ever think that if you focused on just one thing, you could be like even like more successful in that thing, like at the very top of it? Like who knows where you'd be today if you stuck to just politics, right?
Right.
Like you could, you know.
Right.
So.
They had, the Republican Party had asked me to run for state assembly, which I did. My name was on the ballot.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, kind of fun. Let's see. I don't think I would have wanted to stay in politics. I think that my success in real estate can't be matched by anybody that I personally know. And I love what I do. I feel like I'm living my best life, work-wise, career-wise, physically. You know, I exercise every day. I eat well.
So was there ever a time in your life then where you didn't feel like you were living your best life? Like what was like the hardest? Do you have like a point in your life where like, oh, this was where you were really struggling and you had to kind of like turn it around and figure it out that you can think of, or it has always been?
No, you know, I think that if you have a little bit of faith, see where you want to go, and stay on the path, and just don't do anything. Stay on the path, you know, don't do anything that would cause you to fall off. Don't sabotage yourself.
But so I don't think you then really see failure, right, as failure. It seems like you...
No.
Even to the story with the pajamas, like some would consider that a failure because, well, not, I guess you still made money, right? But it's like, I don't know, there was struggle with that,
sure.
right? It was stressful. Things went wrong, but it's not like you're doing that as something, as like a hard,
it's
just
not
part
a
of
negative,
life.
right?
Yeah.
Right. And we've taken big hits on property in Georgia. Ugh. I would consider that property in Georgia a complete failure. But what you do is you get up and it makes you stronger.
Okay. And so I do want to talk about the real estate. I guess one thing I wanted to ask too was with like the cold calling, right? Because you did mention when you're doing the pajamas, you just found the number of the buyer and you just called. And then even I remember when I'd come here and like you find who you need to call
and you call
and you're like really good at it. Like you're a really good cold caller. Is that something you had to learn, or you just always kind of had that? Because that's something people really don't like doing.
No, I know.
Like,
most people
take
right.
someone and they're not like going to do that.
Right. I can make anybody, if they don't like cold calling, I can at least make them be able to do it. But I think that that's like a cornerstone to anybody's success. If you can call somebody you don't know, introduce yourself, and ask for something, that's success.
And does that go back to just how you were raised, where it was instilled in you could always do what you wanted to do?
Go get it. Call.
And just ask what you...
Yeah.
And then so back to like someone that, I don't know, it just seems like, I think your mentality is what most successful people have, right? It's like a necessary part, but it seems like, I mean, most people don't have that. And it seems like, what are you going to do if because you talked about like you had good friends, like your parents instilled confidence in you and like gave you agency, and like you actually did things right with the real estate. So I just wonder though how we can probably get to that later. I'll save that one because I do have that as a question actually. Okay, so with the real estate, so we kind of talked about this earlier. I think you said you had 5 properties that you're flipping, right?
Yes.
Right now? Okay. And so as far as like how many, because I want to give people kind of an idea of like how successful you've been at it, right? How many properties do you actually own between the family where you're like renting them out to people and like you own them and you're not doing any flips or stuff like that?
So we have 150 or so units,
Okay.
a couple of commercial pieces of property, and then 5 houses that we're flipping, which is kind of like a new flipping the houses is a little bit new dynamic to what we're doing.
And have the properties you own, have you owned those for like a very long time, and you're just sitting on them, or like how?
The properties that we have
your
right
apartment
now,
buildings,
I would keep. There isn't really anything that I would sell. As a unit comes vacant in like a 20-unit apartment building, we'll go in and we'll fix it. Nice, new kitchen, new bathroom, flooring.
And to hold or to flip?
To hold.
To hold. Okay.
Raise the rent.
So you're still looking to buy apartment complex? Or like
I wouldn't buy
building,
apartments right now because of what I saw the city do with the eviction moratorium. So, and I feel we have a lot. If I had any more, I would need to focus more time on my real estate, and there's just so much time in one day. That's why these houses are fun for us. I'm able to take my daughter and my nephew in on these, and
my brother.
my nephew, and show them this is the ugliest house on the block. It's totally beyond disgusting, and here is what we're going to do with it. And can you see this? And pull them in and say, well, where would you put that door? And, what color do you think? And let them be part of the creative process. That's really more fun than what I did with my mom, just because she painted an apartment white and that was it.
So you mentioned the eviction moratorium so we're in LA for anyone listening or watching, and yeah, so there was an eviction moratorium where you couldn't kick people out of the apartments, right? Even if they weren't paying rent.
Correct.
And I think California in general, isn't it still kind of more on the renter side as opposed to the person that's owning the building,
yes.
right? It's more like the laws are more in their favor.
It's a blue state.
Yes. Used to be red, right? Back when you were
Reagan red.
See, you stopped, and that's why.
I know.
Because it's blue because you stopped doing politics like full time. So that's obviously like a really difficult thing to go through, right? How did you handle that? Like, did you have renters that weren't paying? And I think it's one thing if they lose their job, right, and can't afford it, versus if they're just not, because some people just don't pay the rent if they don't have to, even if they're still working. Like, I've heard plenty of stories about that. So like, what happened with that?
We had a couple of tenants. One tenant paid his rent sporadically. I think he had an addiction problem, and I think that the pandemic kind of dropped him into a hole. He did apply, and he got the state money to cover his rent, so we were made whole at the end of the day. And good news on that tenant, I just asked him if he got a job he was going out for, and he did, so he's in great shape. I would say most people want to do the right thing. There's really very few people that look to say, okay, this is what I'm going to do to
like take advantage of it.
Yeah.
Okay. So you didn't have any issues really with that?
I have one that's bad,
One?
but
over 150, that's not
right. No,
that's nothing.
And I will leave Victor. We will prevail at the end of the day, but really one out of all the tenants that we have, it's not bad.
Yeah, that isn't bad actually. Yeah, because I've heard horror stories, and then people too. They were like, they were only working so many hours, I think, because they could collect unemployment, and then they could also work, and then they're making like a ton more money than they, it's kind of crazy actually. Yeah. Okay, so that wasn't really. Do you think like your, I guess we could get to the manifesting, the positive thinking, like. Do you think all of that has kind of protected you throughout your life of like really bad things happening to you?
I do. I had a near-death experience.
Yeah, we
and
mentioned that. So can you talk about that story?
Yeah. I was choking on something. I passed out. I turned blue. I stopped breathing.
What age was this? Long time ago or like somewhat?
No, like 19.
Okay, 19. Okay, so very young.
Yeah,
okay.
very young.
Oh, okay.
Actually, I've had two. And left my body, through the tunnel exactly.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, really? All that stuff, all the bells and whistles. Got right to heaven. I saw everybody that I knew, including my cat and my grandfather, that had died. And I got up and I saw my grandfather, and I was so happy to see him. And he pulled back and he said, "No, you're not ready, but I will watch over you and protect you every step of the way. But you will make a difference in every person's life that crosses your path." A very good friend of the family's walked into our house as I am blue on the kitchen floor. He was a medic in the Israeli army.
Wow.
He picked me up with one hand and did the equivalent of the Heimlich maneuver. I think he just about cracked a rib on me, but I'm here to talk about it. So I feel like that experience and seeing different things and changes who you are.
And did you believe in like God before that happened? Or because you said you went to heaven.
Yeah, I grew up going to church, not every single weekend, but it's like, and not a strict religious, but definitely spiritual. But that absolutely changes who you are and what you see. My second near-death experience was on my honeymoon. Okay. Somebody had stepped on my toe.
It's the worst time for it to happen.
Oh,
right?
I know it. I know it.
Where was this? Where did you guys go?
we were all had gone all through South America, but we were in Argentina, and I went to get a pedicure, and somebody had stepped on my toe. This man literally stepped on my toe and then dropped his suitcase on my big toe, and it really hurt. But I couldn't see because I had red nail polish on. So finally in Argentina, I'm getting a pedicure, and they can see that there's dried blood under the nail. And she says she's going to put medicine up, and this is making me feel sick, and I don't feel good, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to tell her I have to go to the bathroom. Now, how do you say that in Spanish? So I'm thinking, I'm going to count to 10. All right, now I'm going to tell her, okay, I'm done. She's got to be done. And I stand up, and the very last image I have is calling my husband, who's running towards me. He was getting his hair cut, and he's sliding because I had knocked over the bucket of water that my feet were soaking in. And when I came to, they were doing CPR on me. My heart had stopped, and I had stopped breathing.
And that was from the medicine?
Anaphylactic shock, whatever that was.
So you're allergic to something.
But we don't know what.
And you orally took it, or it was
no? She was putting it up
under your nail.
Under my nail, but I literally felt the heat come up my leg.
That's crazy.
Oh.
And that though wasn't like, did you go somewhere with that experience too, or no? That was more.
Yes. So I went through the tunnel, out of my body, through the tunnel.
You're like, I'm back, or what? Like,
here I come again. And on that one, I was stopped by Bill's mother and his sister, and they both cried and said, please don't leave him. He needs you. So I went back. It felt like going in a vacuum, like the suction of a vacuum cleaner at the back of your neck. And
did that experience change you at all also, or you already had you kind of got what you needed from the first one?
The first one was definitely way more impactful. But I working as a nurse, I would see other people that we resuscitated come back and share their.
So you were working as a nurse when that first time,
yes, the first time
experience happened. Okay. And so, because you're like I think you're easily the most generous person I've ever known. And it's not even just because a lot of people, they'll donate money, right? But it's like you are generous and help out the people in your life. There's so many different, just over the years I've heard from my mom of different things, right? And so do you think that comes from having that first near-death experience?
I think it comes from seeing my mom always give, seeing my mom always make a difference in other people's lives, being enough evolved to know that it's not all about me. It's not the Jana show. It's about what can I do to make everybody's life better, but it's also being in a position to do it. And that's why everybody needs to be successful, because can you imagine if everybody could live their life of being in service to and seeing what they could do to make other people happy, whether you're holding a door open or buying the person in front of you an ice cream cone?
Yeah. Okay. And then we talked about this too before we started recording a little bit. You said now you have a superpower. Was that from the first near-death experience or the second one?
First.
The first. Okay, so can you talk a little bit about that? What you feel about
I just feel like I have a little extra special gift of an inner knowing in making a decision, a guidance that I really think comes from my grandfather looking over me.
And is it, so as far as the manifesting and all that, was that instilled then from your upbringing too, or was that more of you read something or?
No, even when I was a little kid, my mom would have me go to sleep listening to tapes about manifesting
Really?
and being
Okay.
positive. Yeah.
That's so interesting. It's almost like your subconscious mind was like, because I feel like people, like subconsciously something happens in their childhood that makes them not confident,
And
right?
stop.
And it like
Right.
stop like, and
They
it
get
seems
stuck.
like you didn't really have that, but also you had so much like, you had so many
Extra
things to
push.
boost you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like subconsciously it just like, you were programmed to just have the mentality that you needed.
Right. My mom had polio as a child when
Uh-huh.
she was like 3 or 4 years old in her right shoulder. And she could have gotten disability or considered herself handicapped. She never did. She would shake hands and move
Her arm.
her arm. And we have friends that we had known for 20 years that would say, Jonah, does your shoulder hurt? And she'd say, no. And
Wow.
then my husband would say, Dan, did you know that Jonah had polio? No. I think my mom was one of the first women to break the glass ceiling because she's just dynamite. She can do anything, be anything, and go for it.
Yeah, so maybe if we could talk a little about your mom, because yeah, during that time when she would have been growing up, like you said, it would have been hard for like a woman to make her way in the world, right?
Right.
So how can you kind of talk about the story of her getting like her first apartment building, or like what she did to do that and like start on the
Sure.
path?
She divorced my father when I was like 4 or 5 years old, and she managed the properties herself, and she would buy the properties herself, and we painted, we cleaned vacant units, she showed them. But she really, at a time, when that wasn't the norm, she was out like working and making money. But she has her great little pearl of wisdom of hers is, quote, Susan B. Anthony, every woman needs a purse of her own. And that has been like a driving force. Every woman needs to be not independently wealthy, but secure.
And purse, you mean like money. You don't mean
Right.
an actual purse.
Right.
Okay.
Not the Gucci bag,
Yeah.
but
That doesn't hurt too. Once you have the
I was
money,
thinking
right?
the same thing. I was thinking,
Yeah.
I like that too.
That's funny. So, okay, but you touched on something there. You said your parents got divorced when you were 4 or 5. Were you just too young to really know? Were they really good about still being around for you? Or like, how did that work? Because usually that's like, for a person, that's that
Traumatic.
screws people up.
Right. So I hold no ill will to
your dad.
my father. They got divorced, and he made no contact. He didn't pay child support, which was another driving force of why my mom really instilled in me to be successful and to be independent. But it didn't screw me up. I met him shortly before he died, and
So when you were 4 or 5, he was gone from your life. And
Right.
It was just your mom.
right.
And did your mom have any were there any like stepfathers or any of that, or like she dated, or like other men in your life, or not
Oh,
really?
yeah. A couple that I would have chosen to be my dad. She did remarry. I was very close for a father figure. I was very close to my grandfather. Very special place in my heart.
Grandfather of your
My
mom's
mom,
dad? Your
yeah.
mom's dad. Okay. So do you think then, because that's another thing, when I feel like when a father isn't in a kid's life, that's also like incredibly traumatic, and they generally don't end up well. So do you think having your grandfather in your life as like that male figure for you kind of like is what helped and kind
Yeah.
of prevented that from happening?
Right. Well, and there's also something like a grandparent gives to a grandchild, like, I don't know, like the goodies or something in life. His was M&M's. But I definitely think that he replaced, the male figure. We had great family friends, that the man who saved my life, Jacob, another good friend of ours, Toto, I loved to pieces. So I think that I replaced it. I never had any trauma or injury from it.
Okay. And then, because your mom was from New York and she came to California, was your grandfather in New York still, and he come and visit, or did he move to like California?
No, he moved here when she was a teenager.
Okay.
In fact, so going back to the real estate, my grandfather moved out here at the end, like during World War II, and there was a housing shortage for the returning soldiers. So what he did is he bought a big house, like an 8-bedroom house, and he rented out rooms.
Really? Okay. That was in California? Or? Okay.
Hancock Park.
Wow, that's so crazy. It's kind of funny how like everything kind of revolves around California, and you're thinking like in the past. That's kind of cool. Okay. That's interesting. Okay. Yeah, because that seems to be the thing is, like, then if you have like a grandparent that is a positive, role model for you too. Okay. But yeah, that is that's so interesting, because that is, losing a father at that young of an age. Usually it doesn't pan out. Okay. Wow. I'm going to look at the questions I wrote down. I'd imagine I know the answer, but have you ever felt lost? Like you don't know what you want to do with your life, or you've always you've always had that? Do you have any advice for someone that, like, who does feel lost? Do you have, like, what would be a good way? Is it just like taking action and constantly trying to find what you want to do and not giving up?
Right. Find what you like. Find what wants you to get up out of bed 5 minutes before your alarm goes off and go for it.
Do you think some people just never find that? Or do you think it's just a matter of they just didn't keep trying new things? Do you think everyone will find that thing that fires them up?
I think if they want to find it, they will. And the other great thing, tying this all back together, is a grateful heart. Gratitude is probably like the best thing in life. And nobody that I know does gratitude better than your mom.
Yeah. That's something she always, like instilled in us too as kids.
That's good. Make me tear up.
So is gratitude though, like, I guess it's just that it's part of that is like the mentality thing though, right? Is like having like positive thinking, things are going to work out type of thing. And I don't know, I feel like so if you think someone, you said if someone wants to find the thing, right, they'll find it.
Not that every single thing, like going to work and clocking in, I'm sure somebody wants to be a doctor and ends up being an engineer and they don't love it, but then find what you do love. Maybe it's gardening, maybe it's baking. Find the love. It doesn't always have to equate to money in the bank.
Do you think though there's a component of it that people don't feel worthy of finding?
I think people sabotage themselves. That's what I think.
Okay. And so then how do you break that pattern? What would you say to that? Is it going back to, because it all kind of ties back once again to like childhood, right? Is like feeling like worthy,
loved.
How you're subconsciously programmed, how you're loved, right? Empowered to like do things for yourself, right? That type of thing. So it just, does it go back to that?
I think it does.
Okay.
I think it does, but I think everybody's strong enough to break through and say, okay, maybe I didn't have a good childhood, but here's what I know I can do. And bad things happen to lots of people. My husband had a very tough childhood, but he grew up loved. And from that, he was able to create a fabulous life.
What about when you were in school? Did you go to public school your whole life?
I did.
Like public school? Do you feel like, because think about if your home environment growing up isn't good and you're not getting what you need from that, right? One other place you could potentially get it is at school and with your teachers, or like after school sports, for example, or like the friends you make, right? But I feel like today, school is probably like public school specifically is probably very different than it was when you were going to school.
Right.
Because I feel like today, and maybe it's just the culture as well, but today there's like this victim mindset that gets like pushed out there. And I feel like so not only are people they're not getting what they need from home potentially, but they're also like in everything that they consume. And then at school too, they're being told like you're in your position and you're not going to get out of it. And like,
yeah, again, I think that everybody can break through. And some of the things you have to say is, this is really like awful. This happened, or, that's a messy, ugly feeling in my tummy on something. Put it in a box, put it in the closet. When you want to feel sorry for yourself, pull it out and play with it. But on every other day, get up and put on your happy face and go live life to the fullest. We have so much to be grateful for in this country, that we're free, that we have anything at our fingertips.
So then let's kind of, what would your advice be then to someone, let's just use like as an 18-year-old that maybe didn't have, like they're not going to college, right? Well, let's say they can't afford college at least, right? And they don't have that, like, they haven't developed that mentality of like think they can do anything, right? Like what would your advice be to someone out of high school? Like what should they pursue?
That doesn't want to go to college. I would say find a trade, whether it's a nail technician, a plumber. Learn to do something that has value.
And then I would imagine too, like we kind of touched on mentorship earlier. Do you think it's important then because I think when you're really young growing up, you can't really cultivate the people you surround yourself with. But once you're 18 and you have the chance of being independent, when you're on your own, like maybe you're out of your house or whatever, you can actually cultivate relationships, right? So do you think that's important then too, to find like friends that are like you had, where they're positive and like kind of lift you up instead of tearing you down? And then like maybe a mentor.
I think mentors are great. I think everybody needs other people that you can lean on. And maybe you lean on this person more when your heart hurts, or maybe you lean on this person more because you think they'll give good financial advice, or this person more because you think they know more about loans or buying something. I think it's just that you surround yourself with great people and that you be a great person in the midst of that.
Okay. Yeah, because honestly, like my brother Brandon's a good
Great
example of like he went to high school, wasn't going to college. And I think we knew you obviously, right?
Actually, how it came up is he was over at our house with your mom, picking up Colin, the other
my youngest brother.
I'm Aunt Jana. And your mom, Sherry, my best friend, said to my mom, well, I really don't know, what is he going to do? And Sherry was upset, and my mom said, well, Brandon, what did you ever think about? You've got to get into something. And he said, well, I did think about being a plumber. And my mom said, okay, I'll put you with my plumber for a couple of days and see if you like it. She did. And she actually, again, who my mom is, she paid Eddie, the plumber, so that Brandon could get paid. So that's like where it started. And today, to brag a little on Brandon, he got his plumber's license after
10 years.
not 10 years.
I'm saying 10, like, think of when he was, what, 18, 19, maybe 20?
Right.
And now he's 20. So like 8 to 10 years. But that, the journey
right.
to get
the
there is
journey,
what I'm saying, right?
Right, but he only would work 1 day a week because he was working at that other job. So, but he is a licensed plumber in the state of California, and he also just recently purchased the camera to find the leaks, which is like a big deal. So, success.
Yeah, and I'd say credit to him is like he stuck with it.
He did.
Like, even if you're not doing it every day, like he stuck with it. He worked another job. He did it.
Yeah.
Like I said, 8 to 10 years, right, of that process, and now it's like he's on his way.
He has a plumbing business.
Yeah. Yeah, he does. We're gonna have to promote that at some point once it gets going.
Wait, what time is it?
11.
Okay.
Are you good?
Like 10 more minutes?
10 minutes? That's fine. All right, so I'll just ask you some questions. And we covered mostly everything, actually. What about like advice for getting started in real estate? Like, let's say you don't have money. Is it just simply working a job, eventually high paying, saving money and investing? Or is it maybe finding someone that you can...
It is making the sacrifice when you are young, not buying the expensive car, not living in the expensive apartment, saving your money. The first piece of real estate that you buy is the hardest piece to buy. And from there, it gets easier.
Do you think you'd recommend like a flip, or like what are you, or like a multi-family, like
what I think everybody should have, like this would be perfect for you, like a house and 2 units in the back, a house and a couple units in the back. You're single right now, you live in one of the units, rent out the house, get that property paid off. And then when you get married and have kids, then you live in the house.
Okay.
But the units in the back is income.
So ADUs is like building ADUs?
ADUs, yes.
Okay. What about, what's success to you? We kind of touched on this earlier, but it's not just financial, obviously, right? Is it kind of just a bucket of like money, friendship, relationships, and...
So success, is a yardstick. So you can measure it in dollars. You can measure it in friends. Absolutely, you could measure success with how much money you make or you have, or, and I absolutely do. I know that's a measurement of my success. It's an accomplishment. I've accomplished it. I'm actually very proud of it. But it's also the success of who you are as a person and what you can do to help other people.
If you could start over today, like let's say for anyone, right? What would you... Are you going into real estate? Are you doing a trade? You personally, like what, or like, are you going into politics? Like with how things are now, basically, because obviously like buying real estate back then, right, is different than buying it now, like price wise too. And I also think like the dollar is worth a lot less than it was back then. You get like, right, salaries have kind of stagnated, and then, but inflation, like values of, stocks, real estate. Are you still doing real estate eventually? That's still is the goal?
I will do real estate till the day I die.
Okay.
I'll be looking for a flip.
All right, let's do 2 more. What's your biggest lesson in life, would you say? Do you think it's
to find the best you that you can be and share your love without hesitation at 100%. Don't withhold yourself. Be open. Be true.
Okay. And the last question. Let's say we were sitting in a room with your 18-year-old self and we played your life. Like you got to watch from like that 18-year-old kid is like watching your life play out to now. What do you think that person would say? They be surprised? Would she be surprised? Would she think like, yeah, that's exactly how it...
So my life has been a dream, and it's a better life than I could have ever imagined. I have been so blessed and lucky and fortunate, and everything just about always goes my way. You know, I skinned my knees a few times, but I would say to my 18-year-old self, don't stress. Don't take it to bed with you and go to sleep. Tomorrow's another day. Get up and fight the battle and hang in there.
But you think she would be like, good life?
Oh,
best life.
I say to my husband, next life, I believe in reincarnation. So next life, he better too. So next life, meet you right back here, same life. I would do the same life again.
All over. Awesome. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Connor. Excellent.
This was good. Thank you.